Lamplight trembled across the stable floor where she knelt, straw clinging to her skirt. Christmas Eve. And Sarah Coleman was alone with the horses scrubbing, mending, making herself useful. She didn't hear his boots until they stopped 3 feet from her worn hands. Jacob Whitlock stood in the doorway, hat in hand, surprise written across his weathered face. Miss Coleman. I thought you'd be at the church social. Sarah rose slowly, brushing straw from her dress with quiet dignity. Her hands were cracked from cold and work, her frame thin beneath the worn but clean calico. I had work to finish, Mr. Whitlock. On Christmas Eve, his voice carried something between concern and guilt. Before she could answer, small feet pounded through the snow outside. Emma Whitlock burst through the stable door, blonde braids flying, 6 years old and bright as morning. Miss Sarah, you came. The child threw her arms around Sarah's waist. For just a moment, Sarah's careful composure cracked her face, transformed with an affection she couldn't quite hide. Her hand touched Emma's hair with the gentleness of someone who'd forgotten what it felt like to be needed. Sweet girl, Sarah whispered. I'm just finishing the, will you have Christmas with us? Emma looked up, eyes wide with hope that knew no social boundaries. Jacob shifted his weight, caught between duty and discomfort. He'd noticed Sarah's absence at town gatherings, heard the whispers about that widow woman living in his old homestead cabin. 3 months she'd worked his ranch, and he'd barely looked at her, just another task, another obligation in a life built on survival rather than living. But now he saw her, really saw her. The exhaustion in her brown eyes, the way she held herself with dignity despite having nothing, the crack in her voice when she'd called his daughter sweet girl. Emma's right, he said, the words awkward in his mouth. You should join us for supper. Sarah's eyes met his cautious, measuring. She knew charity when she saw it. I wouldn't want to intrude on your family traditions, Mr. Whitlock. You wouldn't be intruding. He meant it, though he wasn't sure why. Emma would be pleased, and it's Christmas Eve. Nobody should spend it alone. Sarah looked down at Emma, whose small hands still clutched her skirt. Something in the child's face decided her. Thank you. I'd be honored. They walked toward the house through gathering dusk, Emma between them chattering about snow and presents and how the horses knew it was Christmas. Sarah limped slightly, her feet cold stiffened in thin boots. Jacob noticed but didn't comment. When he offered his arm, she declined with a polite shake of her head. The house appeared before them, lamplight spilling gold across the snow. Pine boughs hung over the doorway. Paper decorations, Emma's handiwork, dotted the windows. It looked warm. It looked like a home that remembered what warmth felt like. Even if it had forgotten for a while, Sarah paused at the threshold. Her hand hovered over the doorframe. And for a heartbeat, Jacob saw her clearly. A woman standing at the edge of something she wanted but didn't. Dare claim. Emma pulled her inside. Jacob followed, closing the door against the cold. In the warmth of his kitchen, watching Sarah carefully remove her thin shawl, he felt something shift in his chest, like ice beginning to crack, like the first thaw after a long winter. He told himself it was just kindness, just Christian charity on Christmas Eve. But his hands shook slightly as he hung his coat on its peg. The house hadn't held a woman's presence in 2 years. Sarah moved through it like a careful ghost, touching nothing she wasn't invited to, serving more than being served. Jacob set the table while Emma dragged Sarah from room to room, showing her treasures. The rag doll Mrs. Winslow had made, the pressed flowers from summer, the shelf Papa built just for her books, though she couldn't read them yet. Maybe Miss Sarah could teach you, Jacob said without thinking. Sarah's eyes met his across the room. Something unspoken passed between them, acknowledgement of a future neither had permission to imagine. Supper was simple: venison stew, cornbread, preserved apples. Sarah ate little but listened much. Her attention focused entirely on Emma's excited chatter about Christmas morning, snow angels. The foal born last week, Jacob watched her, couldn't seem to stop watching her. The way she folded her napkin precisely. How she hummed softly under her breath while helping clear dishes. The exhaustion in her eyes that couldn't quite hide the quiet strength beneath. On the mantel, Hannah's photograph caught lamplight. His late wife smiled out from the frame, forever young. Forever frozen in the happiness they'd shared before childbirth took her. He'd kept that photograph there like a sentinel, a reminder of what he'd lost. But tonight, for the first time, he looked away from it, looked instead at Sarah, who was showing Emma how to fold a napkin into the shape of a bird. "You're good with her," he said. Sarah glanced up. "She's easy to love." The words hung in the air between them. Emma, oblivious, clapped her hands at the napkin bird and begged to learn another shape. Bedtime came too soon. Emma insisted Sarah tuck her in. Jacob stood in the doorway of his daughter's small room, watching Sarah pull the quilt up to Emma's chin, smoothing blonde hair with a gentleness that made his throat tight. "Will you be here for Christmas morning?" Emma asked, her voice already drowsy. "If your papa allows it," Sarah said softly. "He will." Emma's eyes drifted closed. "You're like a mama. Miss Sarah, don't let her leave, Papa." Sarah's face flushed. She rose quickly, slipping past Jacob in the doorway. He caught the scent of lavender soap and wood smoke. In the kitchen. Sarah reached for her shawl. "I should go. It's late, and you've been more than kind. Coffee." The word came out rougher than he'd intended. "Just seems wrong to send you back to that cold cabin on Christmas Eve." She hesitated, then nodded. They sat across from each other at the table. The fire burned low. Wind whispered against the windows. The clock ticked toward midnight. Jacob poured coffee into 2 tin cups. It was weak, but honest like most things worth trusting. "Your daughter is a gift, Mr. Whitlock," Sarah said quietly. "She's the only reason I remember what hope looks like." The confession surprised him. He wasn't a man who talked about feelings, but something about the late hour, the sacred quiet of Christmas Eve, loosened his tongue. "After Hannah died, I thought I'd died too. Just kept moving because Emma needed me to." Sarah's fingers wrapped around her cup. "I understand that kind of surviving. Your husband? 3 years ago. Railroad accident." Her voice was steady, but her knuckles whitened on the cup. "I was carrying our baby. Lost her 2 weeks later. Grief does that, sometimes takes everything at once." Jacob's chest ached. "I'm sorry. The town where we lived, they needed someone to blame. Accidents happen, but people want reasons, want someone to carry the weight of their fear." She looked up, meeting his eyes. "So I left. Came here looking for invisible work. A place where nobody knew my story. And found my stable. Found your daughter's laughter." Sarah smiled faintly. That was enough. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, snow began to fall soft, steady, covering the world in quiet white. "Would you stay?" Jacob asked. "For Christmas morning. Emma would want that. I'd want that too." Sarah studied his face. "I don't want to intrude on your family traditions. Mr. Whitlock, you wouldn't be intruding." He leaned forward slightly. "You'd be part of it." The words settled between them like a promise neither quite understood yet. Sarah's breath caught. "Then yes, I'll stay." She walked back to the cabin under stars, her lantern bobbing across the snow. Jacob stood at his window, watching her go. Behind him, Hannah's photograph caught firelight. He didn't look back at it. Something had shifted, like frost beginning to crack, like the first promise of spring buried deep in frozen ground, waiting. Sarah woke to knocking rapid, joyful, insistent. Miss Sarah, it's Christmas, Papa says come now." She opened the cabin door to find Emma bundled in her coat, breath puffing white in the dawn air. Mittened hands clasped together in barely contained excitement. "Your papa sent you all this way. He's making breakfast, real eggs and ham. Please come. Sarah had forgotten what it felt like to be wanted. To have someone run through snow just to bring her into warmth. She pulled her shawl tight and followed the child across the yard. Inside. Jacob stood at the stove, sleeves rolled up, hair still damp from washing. He looked younger somehow, less burdened. He turned when they entered, and something in his expression made Sarah's heart stutter. Merry Christmas, Miss Coleman. Merry Christmas, Mr. Whitlock. Emma dragged Sarah to the small tree Jacob had cut, a scraggly pine decorated with strings of berries and paper stars. Beneath it sat 3 parcels wrapped in brown paper and twine. That one's for you. Emma pointed at the smallest package. Sarah's hands trembled as she unwrapped it. Inside lay a pair of leather gloves, new, supple, lined with wool. She looked up at Jacob, throat tight. Noticed your hands, he said gruffly. Figured you could use them. I can't accept. You can. You will. His voice was gentle but firm. It's Christmas. Emma thrust her gift at Sarah next to drawing carefully folded. Sarah opened it to find 3 stick figures holding hands. Above them, in Emma's careful letters, Our Family. The tears came before Sarah could stop them. Did I do wrong? Emma's voice wavered. No. Sweet girl. Sarah pulled the child close. You did everything right. She gave Emma her gift, then a small dress she'd stitched for Emma's doll, made from scraps of her own dress. And for Jacob, his winter coat, carefully mended where the lining had torn. You didn't have to. I wanted to. Sarah met his eyes. Service is my love language, Mr. Whitlock. It's all I know how to give. The morning passed in a haze of warmth. Breakfast together, Emma's stories. The easy rhythm of 3 people who fit together like they'd been designed for it. Then came the knock at the door. Clyde Barrett stood on the porch, a basket in his gnarled hands. Whitlock. Brought some Christmas charity from the church social. His eyes found Sarah in the kitchen. His expression cooled. Didn't know you had company. Miss Coleman joined us for Christmas. Jacob's voice carried an edge. I see. Barrett's gaze raked over Sarah, assessing. Judging. He nodded curtly to her, his courtesy as thin as creek ice. Ma'am. After he left, tension filled the house like smoke. He had no right to look at you that way, Jacob said. Sarah folded a dish towel with precise movements. He has every right. I'm hired help living on your property. To men like him. That means something it shouldn't. You're not. I am, Mr. Whitlock, and we both know it. Emma, sensing the shift in mood, pressed close to Sarah's side. Miss Sarah should live here always. In the spare room, then she wouldn't be so far away. Jacob's jaw worked. Emma's right. That cabin's not fit for winter. You could take the spare room, proper, separate, just closer. Sarah's hand stilled on the towel. Mr. Whitlock, I won't give this town more reason to talk. Let them talk. Easy for you to say. Her voice was quiet but firm. You own land. You have a name here. I have nothing but my reputation, and even that's threadbare. She touched Emma's hair gently. Thank you for the most beautiful Christmas I've had in years, but I should go now. She left before he could argue further. Jacob stood at the window, watching her cross the yard. Emma tugged his sleeve. Why can't she stay? Papa. Because sometimes the world makes things complicated that should be simple. But he was tired of complicated. Tired of letting fear and propriety dictate his life. That afternoon, he heard the ranch hands talking outside the barn. Boss is sweet on that widow woman. Wonder how long before he makes her more than hired help or sends her packing when the gossip gets too loud. Their laughter drifted away on the wind. Jacob's hands clenched into fists. He'd let Hannah's death make him a coward, let grief build walls around his heart. And now, when something good stood right in front of him, he was letting other people's whispers keep him silent. No more. He crossed the yard to the cabin, knocked. Sarah opened the door. Surprise and wariness mingled in her expression. "Have supper with us," he said. "Tonight, tomorrow night, every night. If you'll come, I don't care what Clyde Barrett or anyone else thinks." "Mr. Whitlock." "Jacob, my name's Jacob, and I'm asking you, Sarah, to let us." He struggled for words. "Emma needs you. I need don't." Sarah's voice broke. "Don't say things you can't mean. I've survived by expecting nothing. It's safer that way." "I'm tired of safe." He held her gaze. "Aren't you?" She didn't answer. But when evening came, she walked through his door, and the next night, and the next. A pattern formed, fragile as new ice, but forming nonetheless. 3 days later, a blizzard struck. Sarah had come for supper as she did now most evenings. But the storm hit fast and mean the kind that turned the world white and wild in minutes. The kind that made a man grateful for walls and warm company. "You can't go back to the cabin in this," Jacob said, watching snow pile against the windows. "I've weathered worse. Not alone, not in my employ." His voice was firm. "You'll stay here until it passes." Emma clapped her hands. "A snow party, Miss Sarah can sleep in my room." So Sarah stayed. One night became 2, then 3. The blizzard raged outside while inside. Something quieter but equally powerful began to grow. She taught Emma letters using Hannah's old primer. Jacob watched from the doorway, his heart a tangle of gratitude and guilt. Hannah's book in Sarah's hands felt like both betrayal and benediction, his late wife's legacy being honored by a woman he was beginning to need. Evenings. After Emma slept, Jacob and Sarah sat by the fire. At first they maintained careful distance, conversation polite and measured. But by the third night, exhaustion and proximity wore down their walls. "Tell me about her," Sarah said. "Your wife." Jacob was silent for a long moment. "Hannah was good, kind. She wanted this ranch to be a place of refuge for travelers, for those down on their luck. She would have liked you." "You don't have to say that. I'm not just saying it." He met her eyes across the firelight. "She would have seen what I'm just starting to see. That you're not just surviving. You're grace under pressure. Strength wrapped in gentleness." Sarah's breath caught. "Jacob, I'm tired of living like she's still watching. Like moving forward means forgetting her." His voice roughened. "Emma needs more than a ghost of a mother. And I need—" He didn't finish. Couldn't finish. Sarah stood, restless. "I'm afraid to want things. Every time I did, they were taken. My husband, my baby, my home. I learned to make myself small, invisible. Wanting nothing hurts less." Does it? Jacob stood too, crossing the room until only a few feet separated them. Or does it just hurt different? Lightning flashed outside, rare in winter. Thunder followed. Sarah jumped, without thinking. Jacob's hand covered hers where it gripped the chair back. "You're safe here. I promise you that." Her eyes searched his face. "Promises break. Jacob. Not this one." The moment stretched, taut as wire, their hands touching, fire crackling, storm raging beyond the walls. Sarah pulled away first. "I should check on Emma." She fled up the stairs, and Jacob let her go. But something had shifted between them. Words spoken couldn't be unspoken. Walls once solid now showed cracks. The storm cleared on the third morning. Sunrise broke through clouds in shafts of gold and rose. Sarah stood at the window. wrapped in one of Hannah's old coats Jacob had offered when she complained of cold. She didn't know he stood behind her until he spoke. "You don't have to go back to that cabin." She turned. "Jacob, stay. Here, in the spare room. Proper and separate, but close. Where Emma can see you every morning. Where I can—" He swallowed hard. "Please," Emma's voice called from upstairs, breaking the moment. "Papa, Miss Sarah, I'm hungry." Sarah smiled faintly. "Real life always interrupts, doesn't it? Is that a no?" "It's a— Let me think about it." But thinking was dangerous. Thinking led to wanting, and wanting led to loss. She'd learned that lesson well. Sunday came cold and bright. "Come to church with us," Jacob said over breakfast. Sarah's hands stilled on her coffee cup. "That's not wise." "Why not?" "You know why." She glanced at Emma, chose her words carefully. "People talk, Jacob. They see patterns and make assumptions. Let them assume what they want. I'm asking you to come as part of this household." Emma bounced in her chair. "Please, Miss Sarah, you can sit with us in our pew." Sarah wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed at her to stay invisible, to avoid giving the town ammunition for their whispers. But Emma's hope and Jacob's steady gaze wore her down. "All right," she said quietly. "I'll come." The church sat 12 miles from the ranch. A simple building of whitewashed wood with a bell tower that could be heard for miles. 40 people gathered there each Sunday, farmers, ranchers, townspeople. The social center of their scattered community. Sarah walked in beside Jacob and Emma, and the whispers started immediately. Women's heads bent together. Men's eyes narrowed. Martha Doyle, the town matriarch, stared pointedly from her front pew. Jacob guided Sarah to his family's pew, not in the back where hired help belonged, but in the front third where respectable families sat. He was claiming space, making a statement. Sarah's stomach twisted, but she kept her head high. The service passed in a blur of hymns and scripture. Sarah heard none of it. She felt only the weight of judgment pressing down from all sides. Afterward, on the church steps, Martha Doyle made her move. "Jacob Whitlock, a word." Jacob paused, Sarah and Emma beside him. Martha's smile was thin as paper. "That woman under your roof, with your daughter Hannah, would be ashamed." Blood drained from Sarah's face. Jacob's jaw tightened. "Mrs. Doyle, this is improper, indecent even. Think of Emma's reputation. What will people say when she's older, that her father housed a strange woman, alone, without—" "Miss Coleman works for me," Jacob said. His voice was steady, but his eyes showed the conflict within. "She's been helpful with Emma, that's all." The words hit Sarah like stones. That's all, just hired help. Nothing more. She'd been a fool to hope for anything different. "I understand completely. Mr. Whitlock." Sarah's voice was clear, dignified. "I'll collect my things today. Thank you for your hospitality." She walked away through the snow, head high, heart shattered into pieces too small to count. Behind her, Emma's voice rose in tears. "Papa, why did you let her leave? She's our family." But Sarah kept walking, away from the church, away from the man who'd let fear silence truth. Away from the child who'd shown her what love could look like, if the world allowed it. She made it to the edge of town before the tears came. Jacob stood on the church steps, watching Sarah disappear down the snow-covered road. Emma sobbed against his leg. "You let her go. You let them be mean to her." Around them, townspeople dispersed, satisfied. Martha Doyle nodded curtly and swept away. Others avoided his eyes, whether from respect or embarrassment. He couldn't tell. He'd chosen peace with the living over truth in his heart, and it felt like cowardice. The ride home was silent. Emma wouldn't look at him. When they reached the ranch, she ran to her room and slammed the door. Jacob stood in his empty kitchen, Sarah's coffee cup still sat on the table from breakfast, her mending basket by the fire. The curtains she'd repaired, evidence of her presence everywhere. The house felt like a tomb. 3 days passed. Sarah stayed in the homestead cabin, making no move to pack, making no move to seek him out. She had nowhere to go midwinter, no money for travel. She was trapped by circumstances, and he'd made those circumstances unbearable. Jacob went through the motions feeding animals, checking fences, caring for Emma. But he'd hollowed out again, become the ghost man he'd been after Hannah's death. Emma wouldn't speak to him, not at meals, not at bedtime. Her silence was worse than her tears. On the third evening, New Year's Eve, Emma appeared in the kitchen dragging Hannah's old trunk. "What are you doing?" Jacob asked. "Looking for Mama's shawl, the blue one." Emma rummaged through carefully folded clothes, through bundles of letters tied with ribbon. Then she pulled out a small leather journal. "What's that Mama's writing book?" Emma thrust it at him. "She wrote about you, and me, before I was born." Jacob's hands shook as he took it. He hadn't known Hannah kept a journal. After her death, he'd boxed her things quickly, unable to bear looking at them. Now he opened it to the last entry, dated days before Emma's birth. The words hit him like a fist to the chest. "If I don't survive this delivery, Jacob and I fear I may not then hear me clearly. Don't let grief make you cruel. Don't let my memory become a cage. Love again. Emma needs a mother's heart, and you need a partner's grace. Promise me choose life over memory. Be happy. Let me go." That's what love does, it releases. It doesn't chain. Be brave, my darling. Be free. The journal fell from his hands. Hannah had released him before she died. She'd given him permission, no. She'd begged him to move forward, to love again, to choose life. And he'd been using her memory as an excuse for fear. "Papa." Emma's voice was small. "Are you crying?" He was great, gulping sobs that came from somewhere deep and broken inside him. Emma climbed into his lap, her small arms wrapping around his neck. "Mama wanted you to be happy. Miss Sarah makes you happy. I see it." "I was afraid," Jacob whispered. "Afraid that loving Sarah meant forgetting your mama. But Mama said to love again." Emma pulled back, her 6-year-old face impossibly wise. "So maybe loving Miss Sarah is how we remember her, by doing what she asked." Out of the mouths of children, Jacob held his daughter close, Hannah's words echoing in his mind. Then he set Emma down and stood. "Where are you going?" "To fix what I broke." He saddled his horse and rode through dusk to the homestead cabin. Lamplight flickered in the window. He dismounted, knocked. Sarah opened the door, surprise and wariness flooding her face. "Jacob." "I was afraid," he said without preamble. "Afraid loving you would erase Hannah. But Emma's right, you're already family. I was just too cowardly to say it when it mattered, when it cost me something." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Words are easy in private. Jacob, what about when they cost something?" "Then I'll say them where they cost the most. Tomorrow. Church. In front of everyone who judged you. And if they reject both of us, then we'll be rejected together." He stepped closer. "But I won't let you face another cold morning alone. Not ever again." Sarah's breath caught. "You mean that?" "With everything I am." She fell into his arms then, and he held her like he should have held her on those church steps, with strength and certainty and absolute refusal to let the world's cruelty separate them. Dawn broke over them, still standing there, wrapped in each other, and the first real hope either had felt in years. "Now comes the hard part," Sarah whispered, "standing in daylight for what I claimed in darkness." Jacob pulled back to meet her eyes. "I'm ready. Are you—" She thought of all she'd lost, all she'd survived, All the times she'd been knocked down and found the strength to rise. "Yes," she said. "I'm ready." Sunday came again. Jacob dressed carefully. Emma wore her best dress. Sarah wore her cleanest skirt and the shawl Jacob had given her blue wool. Warm as a promise. They rode to church together, a united front. The building came into view, white against winter sky. People gathering on the steps as they always did before service. Jacob helped Sarah down from the wagon, took her hand. Emma gripped the other. "Together," he said. They walked toward the church. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Martha Doyle's face flushed red. Jacob didn't pause at the door. He walked straight to the front of the church, where everyone could see him, where his voice would carry. He turned to face the congregation. "Before we start today, I need to say something." His voice was steady, clear. "Sarah Coleman has been judged by this town without mercy or justice. I won't let that stand anymore. Silence thick as wool. She's the finest woman I've known, kind to my daughter when I was too grief-blind to be present. Patient with a broken man, and stronger than anyone in this room. I'm asking her to be my wife. And I'm asking this community to examine its own heart." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Martha Doyle opened her mouth to speak. But before she could, old Amos Winslow stood slowly from his pew. He removed his hat, his weathered face solemn. "Jacob's right." Amos's voice creaked with age but carried authority. "We've been cruel when we should have been Christ-like. Widow Coleman, you're welcome at my table anytime. And Jacob Hanna would be proud of the man you're being today." Another person stood. Then another. Young families, other widows, the decent folks, the ones who'd been uncomfortable with the town's judgment, but too timid to oppose it alone. Not everyone stood. Martha Doyle remained seated, lips pressed thin. A few others stayed down. But the majority rose. Sarah looked up at Jacob, tears streaming down her face. Then she turned to the congregation, finding her voice. "I accept both the proposal and the welcome." Her voice rang clear. "And for those who can't offer either, I understand. Forgiveness takes time. I have plenty now. Grace in the face of judgment. Mercy offered to those who'd shown her none." Even Martha Doyle's expression softened slightly. The minister cleared his throat. "Well then, Mr. Whitlock, Miss Coleman, see me after service. We have a wedding to plan." The service proceeded. But everything had changed. Afterward, people approached. Amos shook Jacob's hand. His wife embraced Sarah. Young mothers spoke kindly. The tide had turned not completely, not universally, but enough. Martha Doyle passed them on her way out. She paused, studied Sarah with sharp eyes. "Hannah Whitlock was my friend," Martha said quietly. "I grieved her deeply. That's why I—" She pressed her lips together. "But grief doesn't excuse cruelty. Welcome to the community, Miss Coleman." Properly this time, it wasn't an apology. Exactly. But it was acknowledgement, movement. Sarah inclined her head. "Thank you, Mrs. Doyle," on the ride home. Emma chattered about the wedding, about spring, about everything bright and good. Jacob held Sarah's hand the entire way. "We did it," she whispered. "No," he corrected. "We survived it. Together, that's what we'll keep doing." And Sarah, for the first time in 3 years, believed in together again. 2 months later, early March. Spring came slow to Montana, but it came sure. Snow melted into streams. Green shoots pushed through brown earth. The cottonwood in Jacob's yard showed the first hint of buds. Wedding day dawned clear and bright. Sarah stood in Emma's room, wearing Hannah's wedding dress. She'd altered it, removed heavy lace, simplified the lines, added her own touches. It honored the past while claiming the future. Emma, in a yellow dress with flowers in her braids, circled Sarah like an excited bird. "You're so pretty." "Papa's going to cry." "Your papa doesn't cry." "He did when he read Mama's journal. And when you said yes, he cries when he's happy now." Sarah's throat tightened. She knelt before Emma, taking small hands in hers. "Thank you, sweet girl, for seeing what your papa and I were too scared to see, for bringing us together." Emma threw her arms around Sarah's neck. "Now you'll really be my mama. Forever. Live forever," Sarah promised. Outside, under the cottonwood tree, 30 people gathered. Not the whole town, but those who mattered, those who'd stood for mercy. Amos Winslow officiated, his Bible worn from decades of reading. Jacob stood beneath the tree in his best suit, hat in hand, looking nervous and hopeful and impossibly dear. When Sarah appeared, his face transformed. Emma was right. Tears shone in his eyes. Sarah walked toward him through spring grass, heart full to bursting. They stood before each other, before God and community, before the future they'd fought to claim. "Speak your vows," Amos said. Jacob's voice was steady. "Sarah, I promise to choose you every day, to stand beside you in sun and storm, to see you really see you when the world tries to make you invisible, to make this life our home." Sarah's turn. "Jacob, I promise to trust your love even when fear whispers lies, to cherish Emma as my own, to build something beautiful from broken pieces, to be your partner in all things." Amos smiled. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Jacob, kiss your bride." Jacob cupped Sarah's face in calloused hands and kissed her tender and sure and full of promise. The gathered crowd cheered. Emma whooped with joy. Afterward, they shared a meal. Simple food, honest laughter. Martha Doyle brought a cake peace offering and blessing both. Young couples congratulated them. Children played in the yard. Sarah stood at the edge of the celebration, watching Jacob talk with Amos, watching Emma chase other children through the grass. She touched her belly's slight swell hidden beneath her dress. New life growing. She hadn't told Jacob yet. Would tell him tonight. In the quiet after celebration ended. Spring baby coming. Life continuing. Multiplying. She'd thought her story ended with loss, but it had only been pausing, gathering strength for the next chapter. Evening settled soft over the ranch. Guests departed with warm farewells and promises to visit. Emma, exhausted from excitement, fell asleep in Sarah's arms. Jacob carried his daughter to bed, Sarah following. They stood together in the doorway, watching Emma sleep, golden hair spread across her pillow, one small hand clutching her doll. "Our daughter," Sarah whispered. "Our family," Jacob corrected. They walked through the house, their house now. On the mantel, Hannah's photograph remained, but beside it sat a new wedding photograph. Past and present, coexisting peacefully. Emma's wooden horse toy sat in the new cradle Jacob had built. Waiting for the baby Sarah carried, she took his hand, placed it on her belly. "Jacob, there's something I need to tell you." He froze, looked at her. Understanding dawned slowly, then blazed bright. "Sarah, are you—" "Spring baby, due in June." His arms came around her, and he held her like she was something precious and breakable and eternal all at once. "A baby," he whispered against her hair. "Life, more life." They stood there, wrapped in each other and lamplight and the knowledge that what they'd built together was solid and true. Later, they walked to the stable full circle to where their story began. The stable was clean now, organized. Both their work visible in every corner. New hay, mended stalls, tools hung neatly. In the pen, spring lambs born that morning bleated softly, pressed against their mothers. Sarah and Jacob stood in the stable doorway, watching sunset paint the sky gold and rose. Emma's laughter drifted from the house she'd woken. was playing with a kitten. I used to think love was something that happened once, Jacob said quietly. That Hannah was my one chance, and I'd lost it. And now I know love isn't limited. It grows. It makes room. The heart's bigger than we think. Sarah leaned into his shoulder. His arm came around her steady, sure, permanent. A man's measure isn't his land, Jacob said. It's whether he sees the folks who tend it, whether he's brave enough to claim love when it arrives. Even if it arrives in the lowest places, Sarah smiled. Especially then. He kissed the top of her head. Grace comes quiet, like first snow, but when it melts, it feeds everything green. The lamp hanging in the stable burned steady, no more trembling. Just light, just warmth, just home. Emma's voice called from the house, "Mama, Papa, come see the kittens." "Mama," the word still made Sarah's heart skip. "Coming, sweet girl," she called back. They turned from the sunset, from the stable where their story began, and walked toward the house, toward lamplight and laughter, toward the child who'd bridged their broken hearts, toward the baby growing within her, toward all the tomorrows they'd fought to claim. Behind them, spring lambs bleated, new life everywhere, second chances blooming like wildflowers after rain. Jacob paused at the door, looking back at Sarah. "You know what Hannah wrote in her journal that love releases. It doesn't chain." She was right. About everything, about choosing life, about being brave enough to let go and reach forward. He squeezed her hand. About you being exactly what we needed. They stepped into the house together. The door closed behind them, not shutting out the world, but sheltering the family they'd become. And if somewhere in heaven Hannah Whitlock smiled, well, love does that. It releases so new love can grow. It whispers blessings from beyond the veil. It says, live, love, be happy, I'm free, and so are you. The lamp on the table burned steady through the night. In the morning, Emma would wake to both a mother and father. The baby would grow. The seasons would turn. But tonight, this moment, was enough. More than enough. It was everything.